In the dim glow of a distant star, where the vast expanse of space stretched endlessly in every direction, an alien princess found herself caught in a moment that felt both infinite and fleeting. Her name was Lyria, though few outside her homeworld knew it. She stood aboard the grand observation deck of her sleek silver spacecraft, its walls shimmering with holographic displays that mapped constellations unfamiliar to human eyes. The air hummed faintly with energy, a soft vibration that seemed alive, as if the ship itself shared her unease. Lyria's slender frame was draped in flowing robes woven from threads that shifted colors like liquid light. They were designed not only for beauty but also for practicality, allowing her movements to be fluid yet deliberate. Her skin carried a faint luminescence, glowing softly under the artificial lights, while her large almond-shaped eyes reflected an intelligence far beyond what most beings could comprehend. But today, those luminous eyes darted nervously toward the entrance of the chamber, anticipation tightening her chest. She had heard tales of Earth's warriors, humans who fought with fierce determination despite their relatively primitive technology compared to hers. Tales spoke of courage born out of necessity, resilience forged through adversity. And now one such warrior stood just beyond the threshold, waiting to meet her. Captain Elias Kane, leader of Earth's interstellar envoy, had arrived on her vessel after weeks of diplomatic negotiations. He was tall by human standards, his broad shoulders accentuating a commanding presence even when stillness claimed him. His dark hair was cropped short, framing sharp features etched with years of hardship and triumph. A scar ran along his jawline, a testament to battles fought and survived. To Lyria, this meeting was more than mere diplomacy. It represented something fragile yet monumental. For centuries, her people had remained isolated, wary of outsiders encroaching upon their domain. Yet here she was, tasked with bridging two worlds so vastly different they might as well have been galaxies apart. It wasn't merely about forging alliances or securing resources. It was about understanding, connection, survival. But none of these weighty thoughts calmed the flutter in her stomach as the heavy doors slid open with a whisper-soft hiss. There he was, stepping into the room with measured strides, his boots making barely audible clicks against the polished floor. His gaze locked onto hers immediately, unwavering and intense. To anyone else, it might have seemed intimidating, even hostile. But Lyria saw something deeper, a quiet curiosity masked by discipline, a spark of humanity beneath layers of armor both literal and figurative. Her hands trembled slightly at her sides, though she tried to steady them by clasping them together in front of her abdomen. This simple gesture betrayed her nervousness, but she hoped it would pass unnoticed. Humans were known for their perceptiveness, however, and she feared he might see right through her carefully composed exterior. Her heart raced faster than it ever had before, not from fear, but from an overwhelming sense of vulnerability. What did he think of her? Did he find her strange? Alien? Weak? Elias stopped a respectful distance away, inclining his head in a gesture of acknowledgement. "Princess Lyria," he said, his voice deep and resonant, carrying a warmth that surprised her. She hadn't expected kindness from someone so battle-hardened. "It is an honor to stand before you." The words caught her off guard, and for a moment, all she could do was stare at him, her mouth slightly agape. Quickly realizing how undignified she must look, she snapped her lips shut and forced herself to respond. "Captain Kane," she managed, her own voice lilting and melodic, though tinged with hesitation. "The honor is mine." As soon as the words left her lips, she regretted them. They sounded rehearsed, hollow, inadequate. She cursed herself internally, wishing she had prepared better for this encounter. Diplomacy was supposed to be her strength, yet here she was, fumbling over pleasantries like a novice. Her discomfort grew palpable as silence settled between them, thick and awkward. She shifted her weight from one foot to the other, unsure what to do with her hands now that they weren't clasped tightly enough to hide their trembling. Should she offer a formal bow? Extend her hand in greeting? Neither option felt quite right, and the uncertainty paralyzed her further. Elias, sensing her unease, took a small step forward. "Your Highness," he began again, his tone softer this time, almost gentle. "I understand this meeting may feel unconventional, but I assure you, my intentions are peaceful. We're here to learn, not to impose." His words were meant to reassure her, and perhaps they would have succeeded if she hadn't already been spiraling into self-doubt. Instead, They only amplified her awareness of how much rested on her shoulders. If she failed, if she couldn't maintain composure, what would become of her people? Of this fragile alliance? I appreciate your candor, Captain, she stammered, hating how weak her voice sounded. She swallowed hard, trying to gather her thoughts. It is reassuring to hear such sentiments. Reassuring. That was a safe word, wasn't it? Safe, neutral, diplomatic. Why did everything she say feel so calculated, so devoid of authenticity? She longed to express herself freely, to let down her guard and speak from the heart. But how could she when every word carried the weight of entire civilizations? Her gaze flickered downward briefly, avoiding his piercing eyes. She noticed then that his hands were relaxed at his sides, not clenched into fists or hovering near weapons as she had half expected. This small detail gave her some measure of comfort, though it did little to quell the storm raging within her. "Forgive me," she murmured, lifting her chin slightly in an attempt to regain control. "This is new for me. Meeting someone like you." "Someone like me?" Elias echoed, raising an eyebrow ever so slightly. There was no mockery in his expression, only genuine curiosity. "What does that mean?" Lyria hesitated, her mind racing to find an answer that wouldn't offend him, or worse, reveal too much of her inner turmoil. "You are formidable," she finally said, choosing her words carefully. "Your reputation precedes you. Warriors of your caliber are rare among my kind." He chuckled softly, the sound low and rich, sending an unexpected shiver down her spine. "Rare doesn't mean superior," he replied. "Just different. As are you, your highness. Different." The word lingered in the air between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. Different didn't begin to capture the chasm separating their worlds. Yet there was something comforting in the way he said it, as if difference weren't a barrier but an opportunity. Still, Lyria couldn't shake the feeling that she was failing miserably at this exchange. Every instinct screamed at her to retreat, to hide behind protocol and formality until she regained her footing. But something held her rooted to the spot. Perhaps it was the sincerity in his gaze, or the subtle tilt of his head that suggested he truly wanted to understand her. Whatever it was, it kept her anchored, forcing her to confront her fears rather than flee from them. "You seem uncomfortable," Elias observed after another stretch of silence. His tone was neither accusatory nor pitying, simply matter of fact. "Is there anything I can do to put you at ease?" At ease. The phrase struck her as absurd. How could she possibly relax in the presence of someone so utterly foreign, so impossibly compelling? And yet, his concern, genuine or not, was disarming. It made her want to trust him, even as every fiber of her being urged caution. "I am fine," she lied, forcing a smile that felt brittle and unnatural. "It is only difficult to know where to begin." "Begin wherever feels natural," he suggested, taking another cautious step closer. "We're explorers, aren't we? Both of us venturing into uncharted territory." His analogy struck a chord within her, resonating deeply. Yes, they were explorers, each navigating the unknown terrain of the other's existence. Perhaps that shared experience could serve as common ground, a foundation upon which to build something greater. Taking a deep breath, Lyria allowed herself a moment of honesty. "Very well," she said, her voice steadier now, though still tinged with vulnerability. "Let us begin." And so, amidst the hum of machinery and the distant pulse of stars, two beings from opposite ends of the universe embarked on a journey neither fully understood but both desperately needed. The path ahead promised challenges and uncertainties, but for now, they stood face to face, united by curiosity and the fragile hope of connection. The tension in the room began to shift subtly, like the first stirrings of dawn breaking over a dark horizon. Lyria, emboldened by Elias's calm demeanor, took a tentative step forward, her luminous eyes searching his face for any sign of judgment. "Tell me, Captain," she ventured, her voice softer now, almost hesitant, "what is it that drives humans to explore the stars? Is it conquest? Curiosity? Or something else entirely?" Elias tilted his head slightly, considering her question. There was a depth to her inquiry that went beyond mere politeness. She genuinely wanted to understand. "It's complicated," he admitted, his tone thoughtful. For some, it's about survival, finding new resources, new homes. For others, it's the thrill of discovery, the desire to know what lies beyond the next star. But I think, at its core, it's about connection. We're a curious species, Princess. We want to know if we're alone. Lyria nodded slowly, absorbing his words. The concept of loneliness resonated with her in ways she hadn't anticipated. Her own people, though advanced and powerful, had long lived in isolation, content within the boundaries of their empire. Yet here she was, standing before a human who spoke of reaching out, of seeking bonds across the void. It was inspiring, in a way she struggled to articulate. "And your warriors?" she asked, her curiosity growing. "What compels them to fight? Surely not all conflicts are necessary." Elias's expression darkened momentarily, shadows passing over his features. "Not all fights are chosen," he said, his voice quieter now, tinged with gravity. "Sometimes, war finds us. Other times, it's about protecting what matters, our people, our values, our future. Fighting isn't something we relish, but it's something we'll do when there's no other choice." His words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Lyria felt a pang of empathy for him, for the burden he carried as a protector of his kind. She wondered if he ever doubted himself, if he ever questioned whether the sacrifices were worth it. Before she could ask, however, he redirected the conversation back to her. "What about you, Princess?" he asked, leaning slightly forward, his interest evident. "Why take on the responsibility of meeting with outsiders? From what I've heard, your people value solitude above all else." The question caught her off guard, stirring emotions she hadn't fully confronted. "It is complicated," she echoed his earlier sentiment, her fingers absently tracing the hem of her shimmering robe. "My father, the Emperor, believes that remaining isolated is safest. But She paused, gathering her courage. "I believe we cannot grow without exposure to others. Without risk, there is no progress." Elias studied her intently, his gaze unwavering. "That takes bravery," he said simply. "Not everyone would challenge tradition, especially when it comes from someone as powerful as an emperor." Bravery. The word startled her. Was that what this was? Bravery. She had always thought of herself as dutiful, obedient to the needs of her people. But perhaps there was more to it than that. Perhaps, deep down, she yearned for something greater, for change, for unity, for understanding. "Thank you," she murmured, her cheeks flushing faintly with color. "Though I fear I am not as brave as you suggest." "Don't sell yourself short," Elias countered, a hint of a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Facing the unknown requires strength, regardless of how it looks on the surface." Their conversation continued to flow, each question and answer revealing new layers of their respective worlds. They spoke of histories, philosophies, and aspirations, finding surprising parallels despite their differences. At one point, Lyria laughed, a genuine melodic sound that filled the chamber and startled even herself. Elias grinned in response, clearly pleased to have elicited such a reaction. Yet beneath the growing rapport lay an undercurrent of tension, subtle but persistent. Lyria couldn't ignore the fact that every word exchanged brought them closer to decisions that would shape the fate of countless lives. The stakes were enormous, and the pressure weighed heavily on her slender shoulders. Still, she found herself drawn to Elias in a way she couldn't explain. There was a magnetism to him, a blend of strength and vulnerability that intrigued her. "Do you ever wonder," she asked suddenly, her voice barely above a whisper, "if we're doing the right thing? If reaching out will lead to peace, or chaos?" Elias met her gaze steadily, his expression serious once more. "Every day," he confessed. "But I've learned that certainty is a luxury few can afford. All we can do is make choices based on what we believe is best, and hope they lead us somewhere worthwhile." His honesty struck a chord within her, resonating deeply. For the first time since their meeting began, she felt a glimmer of confidence, not because she had all the answers, but because she realized she didn't need to. What mattered was the effort, the willingness to try. As the hours passed, the initial awkwardness dissolved into something akin to camaraderie. They moved from the observation deck to a smaller, cozier chamber adorned with bioluminescent plants native to Lyria's homeworld. The soft glow cast intricate patterns on the walls, creating an atmosphere of intimacy that neither had anticipated. Here, surrounded by the gentle hum of life, they delved deeper into personal stories. Elias recounted tales of his childhood on Earth, of nights spent gazing at the stars and dreaming of adventures beyond his world. Lyria listened intently, captivated by the simplicity of his upbringing compared to her own sheltered existence within the imperial palace. In turn, she shared fragments of her life, her fascination with ancient texts detailing encounters with other species, her secret longing to travel beyond the confines of her empire. Each revelation brought them closer, weaving threads of trust between them. But as the evening wore on, fatigue began to creep in. Lyria's earlier nervous energy gave way to exhaustion, though she fought to conceal it. Her movements became slower, her responses slightly delayed. Elias noticed, of course. He seemed attuned to even the smallest shifts in her demeanor. "You should rest," he said gently, rising from his seat. "We've covered a lot today, and there's more to discuss tomorrow." Lyria hesitated, reluctant to end the conversation. Despite her weariness, she felt a strange reluctance to part ways. Being with Elias, talking to him, felt safe, comforting, even. It was a sensation she hadn't experienced in a long time. "I suppose you're right," she conceded, standing as well. Her legs wobbled slightly, betraying her fatigue, but she steadied herself with a graceful motion. "Thank you, Captain. For everything." "There's no need for thanks," Elias replied, offering her a slight bow. "Sleep well, Princess. We'll continue this tomorrow." As he turned to leave, Lyria called out impulsively, "Elias." The use of his name startled them both, and she flushed again, embarrassed by her boldness. "I mean, Captain Kane. Thank you. Truly." He paused, looking back at her with a soft smile. "Any time, Lyria." The door closed behind him, leaving her alone in the quiet chamber. Exhaustion washed over her in waves, but her mind refused to settle. Images of their conversation replayed in her thoughts, each word analyzed and savored. She couldn't deny the connection forming between them, fragile though it might be. And while part of her worried about the implications, about what it meant for her duties and responsibilities, another part reveled in the possibility of something extraordinary. With a sigh, she sank onto a plush divan, letting the bioluminescent light bathe her in its soothing glow. Sleep came slowly, her dreams filled with visions of stars and warriors and bridges spanning impossible divides. When morning arrived, Lyria woke with a clarity she hadn't felt in days. The previous night's conversations lingered vividly in her mind, each memory sparking renewed determination. Today marked the beginning of formal negotiations, and she resolved to approach them with renewed focus. As she prepared, donning ceremonial attire that shimmered with iridescent hues, her thoughts drifted back to Elias. His words echoed in her mind. "All we can do is make choices based on what we believe is best, and hope they lead us somewhere worthwhile." Stepping into the Grand Council chamber, Lyria found the space transformed. Holographic displays hovered mid-air, projecting data streams and visual aids intended to facilitate discussion. Representatives from both sides gathered around a circular table, their postures tense yet anticipatory. Elias stood near the center, clad in his military uniform, exuding authority tempered by restraint. His eyes met hers briefly, offering silent encouragement before turning to address the assembly. "Esteemed delegates," he began, his voice resonating with practiced eloquence, "today marks a pivotal moment in our shared history. Our goal is clear, to forge an alliance that benefits both our peoples. Let us proceed with openness and mutual respect." Lyria stepped forward, her movements deliberate and poised. "Indeed, Captain Kane," she affirmed, her voice carrying a melodic cadence that commanded attention. "Our discussions will shape not only our futures but also the legacy we leave for generations to come. May we approach this task with wisdom and courage." The initial exchanges were cautious, each side presenting preliminary proposals and outlining key priorities. Trade agreements, resource sharing, technological exchanges, all topics surfaced, dissected, and debated with meticulous care. Lyria navigated these discussions with grace, balancing assertiveness with diplomacy. Yet beneath her composed exterior, anxiety simmered. Each proposal required careful consideration, weighing potential benefits against risks. Mistakes here could unravel everything. At one point, a contentious issue arose regarding territorial boundaries. A senior advisor from Elias's team argued passionately for expanded access to certain sectors of space, citing strategic advantages. Tensions flared as Lyria's delegation countered, emphasizing sovereignty and security concerns. Voices rose, tempers frayed, and for a moment, it seemed the fragile truce might shatter. Elias intervened swiftly, his commanding presence cutting through the discord. "Enough," he declared firmly, silencing the room. Turning to Lyria, he extended a hand in a gesture of solidarity. "Princess, let us address this directly. Perhaps a compromise can be reached that respects both our interests." Lyria hesitated, her heart pounding. Compromise meant concessions, sacrifices that could ripple through her empire. Yet she recognized the wisdom in his suggestion. Taking a deep breath, she nodded. "Very well, Captain. Let us explore alternatives together." They retreated to a private antechamber, closing the door on prying eyes and eager ears. Alone once more, the dynamic shifted. Formalities fell away, replaced by raw honesty. "This is difficult," Lyria admitted, pacing the length of the room. "My advisors expect me to defend our borders fiercely. To yield even an inch feels like betrayal." Elias watched her closely, his expression empathetic. "I understand, Lyria. Believe me, I do. But rigid stances won't serve either of us. We need flexibility, creativity. Solutions that honor both our needs." She stopped pacing, turning to face him. "And if no solution exists, what then?" He stepped closer, his gaze unwavering. "Then we keep searching. Until we find one." Inspired by his resolve, Lyria returned to the main chamber with renewed vigor. Together, they crafted a proposal that delineated shared zones of operation, ensuring equitable access while preserving core territories. The agreement satisfied neither side completely but represented a significant step forward. Applause erupted as terms were finalized, signaling a breakthrough. Throughout the day, similar challenges emerged, each demanding ingenuity and perseverance. Discussions ranged from cultural exchanges to joint research initiatives, each topic layered with complexities. Lyria leaned heavily on Elias during particularly thorny debates, their partnership evolving into something akin to a dance, each anticipating the other's moves, supporting when needed, challenging when appropriate. By evening, fatigue set in once more, but progress buoyed spirits. Delegates mingled informally, exchanging pleasantries and forging tentative friendships. Lyria found herself engaged in animated conversations with several human representatives, marveling at their diverse backgrounds and perspectives. One scientist regaled her with tales of Earth's oceans, describing creatures that defied imagination. Another shared insights into human art forms, illustrating concepts with vivid descriptions that painted pictures in her mind. Meanwhile, Elias circulated among her advisors, engaging them with questions and observations that demonstrated genuine interest. Watching him interact, Lyria felt a swell of admiration. He possessed a rare ability to connect, to bridge gaps with authenticity and charm. It was a quality she admired greatly, one that complemented her own strengths. As the gathering wound down, Lyria sought Elias out, finding him near a panoramic viewport overlooking the cosmos. Stars twinkled like diamonds scattered across velvet, their brilliance undimmed by distance. Side by side, they stood in companionable silence, reflecting on the day's achievements. "You did well," Elias said eventually, breaking the quiet. "Better than well. You inspired confidence, fostered collaboration. That's no small feat." Lyria smiled faintly, touched by his praise. "So did you. Without your guidance, I doubt we'd have made such strides." He chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Guidance? Hardly. You held your own beautifully. Don't underestimate yourself, Lyria." Her name rolled off his tongue effortlessly now, familiarity breeding comfort. She liked the sound of it, liked how it felt coming from him. "Perhaps," she mused, "we make a decent team." "A damn good one," he corrected, grinning. "Imagine what we could accomplish given time." Time. The word lingered, pregnant with possibilities. They had accomplished much in a single day, yet so much remained unresolved. Tomorrow promised fresh challenges, new opportunities to build upon today's successes. Yet as Lyria gazed out at the endless expanse of stars, she felt a flicker of hope, a belief that together they might navigate the complexities ahead. "We should rest," she suggested finally, reluctant to break the spell but aware of mounting fatigue. "Tomorrow awaits." Elias nodded, offering her a slight bow. "Until then, princess. Sweet dreams." As she departed, Lyria glanced back once, catching his eye. In that fleeting moment, she saw reflected in his gaze the same mixture of determination and wonder that stirred within her. Whatever lay ahead, she knew they would face it side by side, bound by a shared vision of unity and understanding. Returning to her quarters, Lyria allowed herself a rare indulgence, a moment of introspection. Stripping away the layers of diplomacy and duty, she confronted the swirling emotions within. Excitement battled with apprehension, hope wrestled with doubt. Above all, there was a burgeoning sense of connection, not just to Elias, but to the broader tapestry of humanity he represented. These feelings unsettled her, challenging preconceived notions about her role and responsibilities. Sitting cross-legged on a plush meditation cushion, Lyria closed her eyes, focusing on her breathing. The rhythmic inhale and exhale helped center her thoughts, grounding her amidst the chaos. She envisioned the negotiations thus far, replaying key moments in her mind. Each success bolstered her confidence, reinforcing her belief in the alliance's potential. Yet each challenge underscored the enormity of the task, reminding her of the delicate balance required to maintain harmony. Opening her eyes, she rose and paced the room, her steps measured and deliberate. Her reflection stared back from a mirrored wall, revealing a young woman burdened by expectations yet driven by purpose. She saw vulnerability in her wide, luminous eyes, but also resilience in the set of her jaw. This duality defined her, princess and pioneer, diplomat and dreamer. A sudden knock at the door interrupted her musings. Startled, she hesitated before calling out, "Enter." The portal slid open to reveal Elias, his presence unexpected yet somehow fitting. He carried a datapad tucked under one arm, his expression apologetic yet determined. "Forgive the intrusion, Your Highness," he began, stepping inside. "I realize it's late, but I wanted to review some points before tomorrow's sessions. Thought you might appreciate the heads up." Lyria gestured for him to sit, masking her surprise with practiced grace. "Of course, Captain. Please, share your thoughts." They settled onto adjacent chairs, the informal setting fostering a relaxed atmosphere. Elias activated the datapad, displaying graphs and charts detailing proposed trade routes and resource allocations. As he explained various contingencies, Lyria listened attentively, interjecting occasionally with clarifying questions or alternative suggestions. Their collaboration flowed seamlessly, each contributing insights that enriched the overall strategy. Between technical discussions, lighter topics emerged naturally. Elias recounted amusing anecdotes from past missions, drawing laughter from Lyria. In turn, she shared humorous tales from court life, painting vivid portraits of eccentric dignitaries and mischievous courtiers. These moments of levity provided welcome relief, strengthening their bond beyond professional parameters. At one point, Elias paused, studying her intently. "You know, Lyria," he said, using her name with increasing frequency, "you remind me of someone I once knew. Someone who believed in impossible things until they became possible." Curiosity piqued. Lyria leaned forward. "Who was this person?" "My grandmother," he replied, a fond smile tugging at his lips. "She taught me that change starts with believing it's possible. Seeing you push boundaries, challenge norms, it reminds me of her spirit." Touched by the comparison, Lyria felt a warmth spread through her chest. "I wish I could have met her," she said sincerely. "Sounds like she was remarkable." "She was," Elias agreed, his voice softening. "And so are you." The compliment caught her off guard, stirring emotions she struggled to contain. Gratitude, affection, admiration, all swirled together, creating a heady mix that left her momentarily speechless. Clearing her throat, she redirected the conversation back to logistics, though her cheeks retained a faint blush. Hours passed unnoticed as they worked through details, refining strategies and preparing for upcoming hurdles. When exhaustion finally claimed them, Elias stood, gathering his materials. "We should call it a night," he suggested, stifling a yawn. "Big day ahead." Lyria nodded, rising alongside him. "Agreed. Thank you, Elias. For everything." "Always," he responded, offering a slight bow before departing. Alone once more, Lyria sank onto her bed, her mind buzzing with possibilities. Tomorrow loomed large, filled with promise and peril. Yet as she drifted into sleep, one thought dominated her consciousness. Whatever challenges awaited, she wouldn't face them alone. As the days turned into weeks, Lyria and Elias grew inseparable, their partnership evolving into something deeper, a bond that transcended diplomacy. Together, they navigated the complexities of their worlds, forging an alliance that promised peace and prosperity. Yet, as their connection deepened, so did the scrutiny from both sides, forcing them to confront the sacrifices required to bridge their two civilizations. In a climactic meeting, Lyria stood before her father's council, her voice steady as she argued for unity over isolation. Elias, standing beside her, offered unwavering support, his presence a testament to their shared vision. The treaty was signed amidst cheers and cautious optimism, marking the dawn of a new era. As the celebrations unfolded, Lyria found solace in Elias's gaze, knowing their journey was far from over. They had chosen a path fraught with challenges but illuminated by hope. And though the stars above remained vast and unknowable, they no longer seemed so distant. For in each other, they had discovered a courage neither had known before, a courage to dream beyond the boundaries of their worlds. Together, they vowed to build a future where differences were not divisions, but bridges.